I know it's late, but it's time to talk about the qualifying for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. At least that's what I'd like to say, but we can't, because another huge news in the Formula 1 world just came out. Adrian Newey is replacing Andy Cowell as Aston Martin's team principal for 2026. And don't worry, I'll be quick about this, and next we're going to talk about qualifying, I pinky promise you. So, Adrian Newey as team principal. If you are confused about this, so am I, and I think pretty much everyone in the Formula 1 world, because the legendary name is well known for being a designer. He designs cars, that's his main job. He was brought into Aston Martin to revamp that team, to make use of all the money and the infrastructure that they've built over the last few years, to give Alonso a chance maybe to fight for a third title. But now is assuming the role of team principal. And the one and only question that I have is, can Adrian Newey be a team principal? Because taking on a technical role is very different from being team principal, because you have to make decisions, you have to be a leader. And I have a lot of secondary questions like, will he be the one designing the car still? Will he work just as a team principal? Because most of the guys that take on the job of team principal end up not having enough time to play any other role inside the team. So will he be able to do what he does now? Will Aston Martin be fine with him in that position instead of a designer? Couldn't they find any other team principal, like Christian Horner is unemployed? And I'm sure there are a ton of other guys that could replace Andy Cowell as team principal. Although one can argue, for the money that he receives per month, you absolutely should be able to do more than one role at once. For better or for worse, I want to trust that Aston Martin know what they're doing, because I'd really love to see Alonso have at least the possibility to fight for a win next year. That would be one of my dreams come true, honestly, especially if you could fight for the whole championship. That would be the most amazing thing for me. But I of course have my doubts, and I will have to see it to believe it. And so that's a wrap on the Adrian Newey thing. And finally, let's get on with it to the qualifying of the Las Vegas Grand Prix. There is one graph that I showed you last video that I really wanted to show it here, and I've corrected the title and the colors, and it's this one. I basically plotted the best lap time in the qualifying for each team and organized the y-axis for the top speed and the x-axis to the mean speed. And this is very simple. The ones on the right are the quicker, the ones on the left are the slowest teams, the ones on top have the best drag because they have the best top speed, and the lowest teams are the ones more draggy. And on the quick side with the best top speed we have Mercedes, on the slow side with the most downforce we have Ferrari, or not necessarily downforce, drag. But wait a second, didn't the Ferraris bring the Monza spec wing? Why are they so draggy? Well, dear viewer, that's a very good question, but the catch here is they changed it. They changed the wing that they brought initially to a Baku wing, which is more loaded and therefore it's more draggy. And in theory, in a wet qualifying, that would have given them a more advantage position, but it really didn't. Oh, and one quick detail about it, Hamilton still was with the Monza wing for the whole duration of the qualifying and race, while Leclerc was the only one that changed to Baku. So, in honor of our beloved Ferraris, let's take a look at the first fight I picked for this video, the fight in Q1 between Hamilton and Leclerc. So, the lap starts off really similar to both of the drivers, but of course Leclerc with more downforce perhaps had a little more confidence in the car to accelerate faster, and therefore he was gaining a little bit, but it was not anything crucial. It was not anything that would put Hamilton out in Q1 as he did. And as in most laps we're going to see today, the key to this circuit and to unlock the lap time is turns 7, 8 and 9. That's where you can gain the whole time for your lap or lose it. And in the last lap that Hamilton did, it couldn't have been worse. Turn 7, he had a snap of oversteer that severely compromised his line into 8, and he lost a heap of time there. But the worst was yet to come, because on the entry to turn 9 he completely missed the apex and went a little wide, while the other drivers were all riding the curb, all going through it, Hamilton did not. Maybe a lack of confidence in himself, lack of confidence in the car, and lack of downforce, because I will remember you here that Leclerc is running the Baku spec rear wing and Hamilton is running the Monza one, less downforce. And so the exit was even worse because he had another snap of oversteer that he had to correct, and throughout the whole straight he couldn't be on par with Leclerc for the top speed. And you can see in the graphic of speed, Leclerc is just so much quicker than him throughout that whole phase. It's not even close. In just between turn 9 and 12, basically Hamilton loses 1.7 seconds. That's a lot of time, and that's the main differential between Leclerc's lap and his lap, and that's the main reason why Hamilton went out in Q1. Next up, we don't have the fight for the pole because Norris was just that much quicker than everyone else, but we have the fight for the second place between Verstappen and one of my favorite guests to have in this kind of place, Carlos Sainz. And let me tell you, this was an interesting one because Carlos had a gap for Max of just 0.04 of a second, which is basically nothing, especially in a wet circuit because a lot of mistakes are made from both parts, but the one that makes less mistakes or less costly mistakes end up with the victory. And in this case, it was very, very close, and there are a lot of interesting stuff to analyze here. And the action starts in the first turn, because Sainz on the entry to turn 1 loses the car in the snap of oversteer and has to catch the car, and he loses a heap of time in that. But crucially, with a very cool trick, he was able to claw it back. By going up a gear and increasing the traction on the car, he was able to get on power earlier than Max and clawed back basically a lot of the time that he had lost in that snap of oversteer. And that gap would remain fairly constant until the next big braking zone, turn 5. And this is a very interesting one because you see in the delta times, Max gains a lot of time on Sainz on entry, but he loses it all on the acceleration phase. But why does this happen? So let's take a look at the rest of the factors to get a clearer picture. As always, there are two main factors, the brakes and the throttle. Who can brake for the least amount of time, who can carry more speed, and who can get on the throttle first. So let's start by the brakes. Take a look at Sainz's brakes. He brakes a little later and comes off the brakes earlier. That enables him to get acceleration earlier also. If you see the throttle, it's just slightly faster on the throttle than Max. And despite braking a little bit earlier, Max manages to keep higher speed on entry, and that's really where he gains a lot of time. But take a look at the minimum speed corner of both drivers. Sainz carries just a little bit higher minimum speed corner and gets on throttle first, and that enables him to gain speed quicker than Verstappen, and that's where he regains the time that he lost on entry back on the exit. Between turn 7 and turn 9, basically Sainz loses again in the beginning of the section, but by the end of it, especially in the exit of 9, he gains a lot of time, and once again it is due to the acceleration phase, because Max was having a bit of an issue with wheel spin. He got a lot of it, and especially out of turn 9, he got a lot of wheel spin, whereas Sainz didn't get as much, so he's able to accelerate faster and clawed back a lot of the time that he had lost in that section. And by the time we reach the final straight, or the main straight, the biggest straight of the circuit, we get why the Williams was one of the quickest cars in that other graphic that I showed before with the highest top speeds. Because they were gaining a lot in this straight. In the beginning of the straight, Sainz was over 0.2 seconds behind Max, but when the straight comes to an end, he was less than a tenth of a second behind him. And in the last chicane, both drivers got a little bit of wheel spin, but Max got a bigger wheel spin, and so Sainz was able to get a better exit. And once again, it was a drag race to the line, which was the advantage for Williams. And just by 400ths of a second, Max somehow managed to keep P2, and Sainz was third. A very, very good qualifying for Sainz, when he was probably hoping for pole. But the top spot in the qualifying had to be for the best driver of this qualifying, Lando Norris. It was such an amazing pole position by such a margin and almost lost it all in the last turn, so let's get into it by comparing him to Max. And this will be honestly a pretty quick one, because on the hands of Lando Norris, the McLaren was absolutely flying in Q3. He really thrives in that kind of condition, and we are going to see exactly how he did it and almost how he lost it all in this section. In turns 1 to 3, basically Lando is able to throw himself into the turns, ride the curbs, and the car isn't bothered by it at all. Whereas Max has to be a lot more careful than him, because the Red Bull simply looks like it's on ice compared to the McLaren, and therefore just in the first 3 turns he loses a lot of time. He manages to gain back a little bit in turn 5, but he loses it on the exit, and the reason is very simple. As I said before, the Red Bull was having a bit of a problem with wheel spin, whereas the McLaren simply didn't. So he was able to power down much quicker and was able to gain speed much faster, and he regained the time pretty easily. In turn 7 to 9, similar problem. The McLaren was able to ride the curbs much better. He wasn't being thrown by the curbs as the Red Bull was, so he just was able to do them like on rails once again. And so he just kept gaining and gaining and gaining time, and by this time he was almost a full second ahead of Max, which was the second place. And it's insane to think about it, because the McLaren was really, really quick. And just when everything seemed like it was perfect and he was going to get a big margin for second place for his pole position, he makes a huge mistake and almost drops the whole lap in the last chicane. But crucially, he manages to save the car and cruises to the line to finish in P1, 0.3 of a second in front of the second place, which is already a kind of big margin, but it's crazy to think about that. He lost 0.7 of a second in that mistake. And if that's not the best driver of the qualifying, I don't know what else to call it. And you see, as I said, this was a pretty quick analysis. The McLaren was just so much better that I'm only curious to see what would have Piastri done if he had been able to complete his lap, because he was not on par with Lando, but he was pretty quick, and with that mistake on the end, it could have been possible that Piastri was going to make pole position. But that's only in a if scenario. Once again, sorry for the qualifying video coming so late, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, don't forget to leave your like, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and with Qatar in just a few days, I'm very excited, and a video will hopefully be coming on time for the qualifying in Qatar soon.